this episode, we return to the unfolding story between Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan and the Nigerian Senate, a saga that has evolved beyond one individual into a confrontation between a community and the institution meant to represent it. In this video, we're unpacking the layers of constitutional overreach, questionable recall attempts, and chaotic Senate exchanges that reveal a much deeper crisis in Nigeria's democratic fabric. From a 6-month suspension that defies judicial precedent to a suspicious petition with more signatures than votes cast in her election, the story isn't just about Natasha. It's about power, manipulation, and the silence of the people. So what's really going on? What does it say about the Nigerian system when public spectacle replaces strategic resistance and when chaos overshadows constitutional order? This conversation is not just an update. It's a call to rethink what representation should look like and what it means when a people's voice is silenced by the very system meant to amplify it. Stay tuned. Welcome back. If you are new here, please subscribe and follow us on all NEAT social media platforms at neatcommunity.ng. Also, it will be nice if you can turn on the notification icon so you can get notified each time we upload new content. There are a number of topics we need to cover, so rest assured we will be uploading new content every week. NEAT is an acronym for Nigerians Engineering Astounding Tomorrow. It is an initiative designed to bring together young and intelligent Nigerians who have what it takes to look beyond the challenges and divisions in the country and formulate a plan that would transform the nation and follow through with the plan. Now on to the conversation. This is a continuation of the story between Senator Natasha and Senate President Godswill Akpabio. The story has progressed since the last update, and somehow the Senate President has been excluded from the center of the conversation. It now seems to be more of a battle, or let's say a one-sided war, between Senator Natasha, the Senate, and possibly the entire people of Kogi Central. In the last video, we discussed her suspension by the Senate. We questioned how elected officials could suspend another elected official. What may have been missed is that there is an alleged court order declaring that senators cannot be suspended for more than 14 days. So by suspending her for 6 months, the Senate essentially positioned itself above the law and the system that created it. Apparently, it has become a norm for elected officials to exceed the limits of their power, encroaching on the will of the people. If you recall, in one of the videos, we analyzed how some elected officials in the executive and legislative branches, under the guise of declaring a state of emergency in Rivers State, used military force to oust the elected governor, the deputy, and the entire House of Assembly. Now back to the story with Senator Natasha. Remember, we mentioned that the default response would have been for the office of Kogi Central to protest the suspension by approaching the court to challenge the actions of the Senate. Something like that did happen, but it was in reverse. News that circulated on social media reported that her constituency, allegedly more than 205,000 people, signed a petition for her recall, with no replacement. It was also reported that the INEC, that is, the Independent National Electoral Commission, rejected the initial petition, citing missing information, including phone numbers and contact addresses. This information was allegedly later provided, and it is believed that INEC is proceeding with the recall process. On her part, shortly after the supposed suspension, it is widely reported that she approached several international platforms, including the Inter-Parliamentary Union, IPU. She is also said to have had interviews with BBC News, Al Jazeera, CNN, and France 24. In most of those outlets, she maintained a narrative that she was suspended for speaking out against sexual harassment and even requested help, particularly from the IPU. The Senate, however, is reported to have responded to most of these platforms, insisting that her suspension had nothing to do with her alleged harassment, but rather with her unruly behavior on the Senate floor following a seat rearrangement. Meanwhile, on March 26, 2025, it was reported that there was a Senate meeting or arrangement between members of the Senate and either members of the public or representatives of Senator Natasha. It is not exactly clear what the interest of these people was. One version of the story claims that it was a session to submit a petition by Zubairu Yakubu to the Senate regarding the matter of sexual harassment allegedly committed by Senate President Godswill Akpabio. Whatever the actual purpose of the meeting, the main outcome was a heated exchange between the parties, particularly between Senator Peter Nwaibonyi and former Minister Oby Ezekwesili. It is reported that the petitioner, Zubairu Yakubu, attempted to speak while Committee Chairman Neda Amasuen was addressing the room. Nwaibonyi is said to have interrupted this by asking Yakubu to mute his microphone. The former minister is said to have attempted to intervene, but was aggressively cut off by Senator Nwaibonyi. Frustrated by the interruption, Ezekwesili is said to have snapped at Nwaibonyi, saying, "Comport yourself and stop making noise." Her remark triggered an angry response from the senator, who lashed out, saying, "You're a fool. What do you mean? Why are you talking to me like that? I will not take it. You're an insult to womanhood. People like you cannot be here." Ezekwesili is reported to have fired back, calling Nwaibonyi a hooligan, further escalating the heated exchange. Soon, news about who said what and who had the authority to say it became the center of attention. This quickly drew the attention of nearly all news outlets, both online and offline, as opinions were divided on who was above whom in the pecking order of respected Nigerians, as well as who should have insulted whom. Some argued that Nwaibonyi, as an active senator, should have acted in his capacity and maintained decorum, regardless of what was said to him, considering his position. Others claimed that it couldn't have been easy for him to remain calm if he was asked to shut up by someone, let alone a woman, at a meeting where other people were present. They argue that an insult on a man, allegedly a titled man, from a woman hits differently. Once again, the moral codes that we discussed in one of the videos continue to influence things. The reason we're bringing this up is not necessarily to give these details, but to highlight what we mentioned before. The Nigerian system is designed to thrive on chaos. So every now and then, in fact, within every 2 days, you're likely going to hear about one problem rather than anything meaningful. It's important to note that, at the time all of this was going on, young Nigerians, in particular, were still participating in the Number 30 Days Challenge, where they posted videos about how hard the Nigerian economy has been on them. This follows a video by Rhea, where she complained about the cost of living in Nigeria. You can watch that video to get better insights. There was also an ongoing issue where nearly every Nigerian condemned the actions of the executive in particular for militarily muscling out the democratic structure in Rivers State and replacing it with one dictatorial individual who is not even a stakeholder in the state. One would have expected these matters to still be the focus of attention, especially when up till then, even till the time of this video, the presidency had yet to issue any statement addressing those concerns. It is an obvious display that no one cares about the interest of the people, or there is an assumption that whatever complaints were happening are not a reflection of the position of the people, but are politically motivated. If that was the case, then why was the case of unilaterally muscling out the democratic system under the disguise of a declaration of a state of emergency not addressed by the presidency, despite the public rejection of it? Could that have been a demonstration of political differences, too? Instead of all these being the focus of the news and the public attention, it was the chaos that caught the attention. But why the chaos in the first place? Why is the issue involving Senator Natasha appearing on the news for the wrong reasons? It is a reminder of the amount of work that needs to be done for Nigeria to become something valuable. The actions of the supposedly elected officials suggest they emerged from political manipulation rather than being representatives of people's opinions and positions. For example, one would have expected her to be strategic in whatever she wanted to achieve, and to go about it in a manner that would achieve her goal, not just be on the news. To begin with, as we discussed in the other video, there were different issues bundled together in her complaints. The first was the reassignment of her seat, which she felt was part of an effort to oppress her for failing to yield to a sexual advancement. The second was the issue of online attacks on her personality. The third was the illegal suspension of her duties. and the fourth was the sexual harassment itself. The Senate rules only cover cases of subjugation of a senator by the Senate president or colleagues. Technically, that is the matter she should have petitioned within the Senate. She could have included the reassignment of her seat as well as mentioning instances where she wanted to speak and was not allowed to, or any other matters that happened in the Senate that support her claim. She could then have used the outcome of that process or investigation to approach the court to support her case of sexual harassment. She could also have included the case of attack on her personality by the Senate president's aide, either as part of the case or as a separate matter. Submitting a petition to the Senate to look into sexual harassment that was above their purview when there was the law enforcement and the court to address those concerns doesn't particularly speak well about her. The same can also be said about muddling up the entire matter, including the sequencing of the complaints, petitions, and suits, as well as creating an opportunity for the Senate through her handling of the seat reassignment. All these should have also not have prevented her from rallying members of her constituency, including those who supposedly voted for her, to approach the court to prevent the suspension. The same people could also have approached the court, contending that the so-called recall was politically motivated to subjugate her and was not trying to grant another voice to the constituency, but to seal the place, leaving the constituency's voice vacant for the duration. Instead of choosing any of these options, she seems to have opted for actions that only cause public and media distractions while the real evil was being committed. In an election where about 106,000 people voted, and she is said to have just over 50% of the vote, how is it possible that the so-called recall gathered nearly 250,000 people? It is a demonstration of how far the so-called politicians are willing to go to capture the nation and the extent to which the people are willing to keep quiet. If these continue, in no time, the entity called Nigeria may be completely gone, and not gone for good. The onus is on those of us who understand that the promises that lie ahead are far greater than the issues we see today. It is also for all of us as global stakeholders to understand the importance of a stable Nigeria in global affairs and find a way to support the movement to build a better nation. You can watch the video that talks about the future of the world and your role in it to understand better. Thank you, and see you in the next video.